Welcome to Civilization VII Stories, where we explore alternatives to history through the lens of the world's most addictive video game. I'm going to take a bit of a different approach to this retelling of history for a few reasons. The early part of the game, I was waiting for a flight to Europe and didn't feel like having the pressures of doing a screen capture while I ran to the big board every few minutes to make sure I didn't miss my flight. Full immersion in Civ 7 isn't a thing, so no real issue there, but better safe than sorry. I am also hopeful that loyal watchers of my channel appreciate the change-up. Finally, I am publishing this Civilization story because I hope it further highlights what I see as one of the most glaring problems in Civ 7, that of the scientific legacy path. I've stated previously that it is by far the most overbloated path to victory that takes way too long. Other legacy paths are way easier to complete, which makes a science victory, the staffed spaceflight project, an indulgence rather than a meaningful path to victory. Oh, and if anyone out there ever feels, triggered by folks that are critical of Civ 7 and pointing out how deeply flawed the game is, consider this your spoiler alert and your final warning because we're going to visit a bunch of ridiculously bad game ideas in this one. But let's start this history with a recap of what went down prior to 1750. I chose Confucius to lead the Maya in Antiquity. I was prioritizing science from early on and did well in both the Antiquity and Exploration ages, completing future texts in both, but only completing the legacy path in the Exploration age and not in the Antiquity age. As we progressed from Antiquity, I represented China in all future ages. I had some Antiquity age wars with Jose Rizal and we traded a few cities, but mostly I wanted to stay friendly and we eventually resolved our differences. The Exploration age was filled with more conflict, little of it of my own design. Despite trying to be peaceful, Friedrich and Ben Franklin dragged us into a couple of wars, all of which I won, making substantial gains in the homelands. But with all of that conflict, Ibn Battuta emerged as the frontrunner in the game, racing out to having over 2,000 science per turn. A modern era conflict was inevitable. We began the modern era in decent shape, generating over 300 science and culture per turn, and with the world's largest empire with my settlement cap maxed out. We controlled 3 natural wonders as well as the old Roman capital city, which was quite a prize. Friedrich was still very angry and Ben Franklin and Isabella hated us too, but we had a decent influence income and were ready to start endeavors to improve relations. Oh, and the Emile Bell wonder that I built in Antiquity was actually the thing that sparked so much conflict in the Exploration age, as I offered the Ginseng Agreement to all of the distant land civs and everyone rejected it, and subsequently burned our relationships as a result. Thanks for nothing, Sangduk. Research times were as good as I'd ever seen. I felt good, but Ibn Battuta, what kind of game was he playing? In 1758, we got the notice that we were trailing Ibn Battuta in technology. No biggie, so was everybody. 4 years later, I got the notice that we were trailing Ibn Battuta in civics. No biggie, so was everybody. I really don't remember Ibn Battuta ever giving me a hard time in previous games. Weird. In 1770, Ibn Battuta beat me to construction of Oxford University when I was 1 turn away from building it myself. Ibn Battuta. Something would need to be done. First, though, I had to kick Friedrich out of the homelands by capturing Rouen. We declared war in 1773. By 1778, we could see that Ibn Battuta's lead was substantial. With only one narrow path leading into Rouen, it took a little while, but our forces pushed through and captured their objective after a 14-year struggle. We made peace with Friedrich right away. No point in drawing out the war longer than necessary. In 1795, my capital city of Ba'ak completed the Hermitage. In 1802, I built Dogo on Seine in the city of Argos. By turn 45, I had researched flight, averaging a new tech every 4 turns, and my friendly relationships with independent powers was helping. So I was feeling pretty good, but still a fair bit away from aerodynamics. I wasn't pursuing any other type of victory at this point, so I looked on my civics as pretty pointless since none of them really get me any closer to a science victory. They unlock ideologies and okay, I get a few bonuses, but the civics tree really only does 2 things in the modern age. It gives you hegemony, which you need for a culture win, or it unlocks the aforementioned ideologies, which you really only need for a military victory. Athens was another capital city that I thought could be useful as part of my empire. It was isolated but productive, but I needed to denounce Ben Franklin first. I know that war can interfere with progress, but my empire was humming along, and my closest competitor, Ibn Battuta, was getting up to his own shenanigans. By 1819, I completed my transoceanic flight. Now that we had researched armor after a short period of modernization, it was time to declare war on Ben Franklin and take Athens. At the same time, we began to position our main army against Ibn Battuta's border by his capital city of Kampala. By 1823, my ally, Jose Rizal, was at war with Friedrich. I felt that maintaining that relationship would be key to winning. We were stronger than Rizal, and we would need him on our side to defeat Ibn Battuta, so I honored his struggle and joined the war, and it spurred on a golden age. In 1825, Jose Rizal captured the last of the remaining Athenian districts held by Franklin, and it meant that we now held control of the city. By 1827, it was 12 turns to aerodynamics. To further drive the point home who was in charge and to keep Franklin and America off our backs, we also took Chicago in 1830. The next year, we negotiated a peace. Friedrich came to me to ask for peace and offered the town of Monterey in the deal. And that put him out of the game? Wait, did the AI negotiate their way out of the game? Oh, CIV. I swear to God, this game's gonna break me. For befriending my second scientific city-state, I chose Scholarly Network, which pushed our science output back up over 1,000. It had been close to that by the end of the previous age, but you know, age transitions. In preparation for war with Ibn Battuta, we deepened our relationship with Katerina and formed an alliance. Then Katerina went to war with Xerxes. Time to be a good friend, I guess. Then Isabella declared war on us. Then we got a notice that Ibn Battuta had built a launch pad in Kusa, meaning the race to space was on, and I was behind. In 1838, we discovered aerodynamics. There was only 42% of the age done. If we could disrupt Ibn Battuta's quest to get to space, then we could do it first. Only 42% done. Lots of time. 6 turns to break the sound barrier. Oh geez, I forgot about rocketry. 12 turns, ugh. Ibn Battuta needs to go. In 1839, we captured Isabella's Chola outpost of Nagapattinam. Life should be good. I'm at war, suffering some weariness, but poaching extra science through espionage and following that up with a golden age where I'm adding 20% science per turn. By 1842, it was time. This is what games like this are supposed to be all about. Interaction. Ibn Battuta's pursuit of a space victory prompted this action. This is where games like CIV are supposed to come alive and all of its mechanics can shine. First, I laid siege to the satellite towns of Chalkis and Patavium. Taking these 2 cities would allow me to concentrate on attacking the core of their empire with all of my forces without worrying about being flanked from the rear. By 1843, we had broken the sound barrier. That year, we also captured Chalkis. Doing so moved the age progress from 52 to 58%. In 1845, we captured Patavium. For some reason, in the years between 1842 and 1845, just 3 years, the age progressed a whopping 17%, from 47 by the start of 1842 to 64 by the end of 1845. It was now turn 86, which means almost 1/5 of the age happened in just 3 turns.
I mean, come on!
Oh my God, Civ VII, get your house in order. Katerina then got involved in a war with little old America, and we were forced to support her. In 1846, we captured Urayuir, completing our military legacy path. Remember, I was playing this game peacefully. In Antiquity and the Exploration Age, I started 0 wars. I fought in wars, but I started 0. In 1848, we captured Isabella's Chola outpost of Karur. In 1849, we discovered rocketry. Ba'ak was my oldest and one of my most productive cities, but the war was taking its toll on the city's happiness and its yields, and it meant that it would take 24 turns to launch a satellite. That would change when we took enough of Ibn Battuta's towns, stole his launch pad, and eventually made peace. But we need to be quick. He was, after all, the most formidable opponent in this game. Argos was being slightly more productive, so I bought a launch pad outright to get started on my satellite, only 22 turns instead of 24. Again, subject to change with a peace deal. In 1852, we captured Ibn Battuta's capital city of Kampala. When I could, I made peace with Isabella, though it meant surrendering Monterey, a far-off town that was of little use to me with my military legacy path complete. As the winner of that war, surrendering a town I had won for the sake of peace stung me to my core. In 1853, we captured Muebele. It had been an independent power of which I had been suzerain until Ibn Battuta took it over. Now, there was no way to liberate it. My options were to raise the settlement and incur the influence penalty, or absorb the settlement into my empire and incur the happiness penalty for being further over my settlement cap. So to recap, I invested influence to become suzerain of this independent power, came to its aid after it had been captured by the enemy, and was then penalized for doing so. Are you paying attention, Firaxis? Does that seem like justice for independent powers and those that protect them? In 1855, we captured Cadiz. When I could, I made peace with Ben Franklin, and even though I could have taken more towns in the peace deal, working against every fiber in my being, I chose not to, knowing what it would do to my empire's happiness. In 1859, we captured Kusa. In 1860, we completed the Manhattan Project, close to our most populous city, as you do. I was going whole hog on the space train and declined to even start to build Operation Ivy, which would have got me a certain victory. That same year, we captured Kumis. By 1864, the only thing left to research was future tech. Oh, the dreaded future tech. In 1869, we captured Ibn Battuta's ancient capital of Parsa, which I see as a bit of a problem with Xerxes in this game, but shh. Let's not talk about the bad things, or at least let's stick to the science problem. The next year, we captured Madrid and Baghdad. The cost had been high, but we had removed Ibn Battuta's ability to make war and launch his space mission. Though we could have controlled more cities in a peace deal, by now we felt we had done enough. And after all, more cities just hurts us because, and it feels weird to say this, but we had completed our militaristic legacy path a while ago. And now, a series of mindless specialist and growth events. With the turn of the year to 1874, in one turn, with the launch of our satellite, received with little to no fanfare, the age advanced 6%, but we completed our scientific legacy path. Time to build that crude spaceflight. 21 turns. Oof. In 1877, we captured Xerxes' Mongolian island outpost Wollongong in an attempt to drive home the point of who was top dog, as, up until then, he had been stubborn in holding out against our many requests for peace. With the year 1877 drawing to a close, 86% of the age had elapsed. By the start of 1878, it jumped to 96%. At last, in 1880, Xerxes came asking for peace. I needed to only surrender the settlement I had conquered, which was draining resources anyway, so we had a deal. And this is when you realize that you tried to give up the town in a peace deal, and well...
Computer says no.
98% of the age gone, I was, leading the pack. I had now unlocked 3 of the 4 legacy paths, and the age advanced to 100%. In 1885, the game ended with my space mission still about 6 turns away from launching. I was victorious? Nobody actually completed a victory condition. So what is this? A score victory? How unsatisfying. I had to play just one more turn or I wouldn't feel satisfied. Then, after playing around with some city screens and doing not much of nothing, my spacecraft launched to the drones of colossal disappointment. Then you choose no more turns and you get the victory again. Ugh. First, let me address the elephant in the room. Husky, you don't like this game. Why are you still playing? Some months ago, I set out to create a YouTube channel dedicated to my favorite video game, Civilization. Not Civ 6, not Civ 4, not even Civ 2. Civilization. All of them. For better or worse, this is where we are. And I feel it's important that I at least pass on my honest and informed opinion, rather than make stuff up from what I've heard about or read somewhere else. Since launch, according to Steam, I have played 145 hours of Civ 7, which comes to about an hour per day, and I've completed 6 or 7 games. Again, this is Civ.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
So, obviously, I ran into some frustration with this one. Things like the jerky age progress was really annoying, but also things that I feel I should be rewarded for that were punishments is just a terrible way to design a game. The settlement cap is a terrible tool. It's masochistic. Your rivals in the game should determine the extent of your borders, not a game designer who's against the idea of your empire growing too large. Having no way to restore an independent power seems like low-hanging fruit that ought to change. Am I supposed to assume that my game would have been better served by having my sworn enemy Ibn Battuta keep it? No, 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 no. It's also got to the point where I fear getting future techs. Sure, I get some rewards, which, if I'm getting future techs, I don't need. Like, what am I going to do with an extra attribute point at that stage? But it hastens the end of the age, which, in this case, ruined my joy of winning by launching my space mission. Ruining joy should be a hard, no fly zone for game devs. So, someone, please look into how to make some changes in these areas. Okay, here's where I beat the whole space victory thing to death. Sorry in advance. In case my thoughts on the subject in previous videos weren't enough of a case for some, here's where I bring the receipts. Now, I feel certain that there are folks out there who are going to be like, but Husky, I've won a bunch of science victories and it was easy. To which my answer is, if it was easy, and when I say easy, I really mean not long, to win a science victory, that is a whole other problem. The game should be challenging, not easy. So when I say I brought receipts, here we go. I made a chart. In this chart, I calculated the minimum research and production investment for each victory type. Let me say that again in case it was unclear. This is the minimum research and production investment for each victory. All of the figures in this chart are taken from the CIV fandom wiki and refer, I presume, to games played on standard speed. Also, keep in mind that the pursuit of each victory begins way back in antiquity, and a lot of factors go into achieving them. But I was, as best I could, focusing on science from turn 1. Naturally, I have my own playstyle and tendencies, like I'm not going to let an aggressive neighbor get away with declaring war on me, even if letting them capture my cities and towns would be to my advantage in a space race game. Doing so is antithetical to the spirit of a 4X game, and if surrendering cities and towns that are meant to be the key drivers to productive empires and player success is advantageous in the pursuit of a particular victory type, I see that as a huge red flag. So, the chart. When I refer to research, that can either mean science or culture. The Railroad Tycoon and Space Race victories require technologies to unlock and achieve victory. The Ideology and Geographic Society victories require civics. What I find crazy is that the legacy paths are completely exclusive. What I mean is, for the victories requiring technologies to unlock the path to victory, theoretically, you could produce 0 culture and still achieve your goal. Ditto, but the opposite, the victories that require civics. That's ridiculous to me in a Civ game. Science, culture, production, all of these yields we seek and the mechanics of the game are supposed to intersect harmoniously as we strive toward victory. They are not meant to be wholly separate from one another. What I hope this chart reveals is proof that ideology is the easiest of the victory conditions. Hopefully, people noticed how easily meek and peaceful Confucius catapulted to complete the militaristic legacy path without even really trying. It has, by far, the lowest research threshold, with players needing only to unlock and choose an ideology. It also requires the least production, even if what's required is close enough to the other victories. Railroad Tycoon and Geographic Society victories are more or less the same, although I do make a few assumptions. For Railroad Tycoon, I factor in needing only 3 railroads and 3 factories to get the job done. I also need to acknowledge that this victory also requires establishing World Bank offices in every capital city, which, on a standard-sized map with 7 opponents, assuming all of them are still in the game, could take as many as 14 turns to complete. 1 turn to move to each capital, and 1 turn to establish the office for each. But I've stated before that Railroad Tycoon is really a domination victory because the more settlements you own, the more railroads and factories you can build, and the more resources you can house, the faster you complete the legacy path. For the Geographic Society, very little needs to be done. I factor that having as few as 2 explorers can get the job done collecting artifacts. There are other ways to collect artifacts, but getting an early start is the most important factor. I will acknowledge that finding dig sites on the map can be a challenge. God bless the intuitive Civ VII UI, but building the Royal Society once unlocked rarely offers much of a challenge and, in a productive city, can easily be built in less than 10 turns. The Space Race victory, on the other hand, requires completing the entire tech tree and has more than double the minimum research demand of the other legacies. Needing to complete 4 projects, as well as at least 1 aerodrome and 1 launch pad, means that almost double the production investment is required to complete this victory. Unlike many requirements for the other victories where gold can be used as a currency to complete things like explorers, rail stations, and factories, the science projects need to be hard built using production. Railroad Tycoon requires 0 projects. Geographic Society, 1. Ideology, 2. But Space Race, 4. So that's more hard-built projects than all of the other victories combined. If you've gone out there and won a science victory without batting an eyelash, I applaud you. If you're thinking that I just suck at Civ, then okay, cool. Winning consistently on Deity, I will admit, is no big deal. As you can see, I did it again here. But like I said, I played as peaceful a game as my sense of fun will allow. Soren Johnson, lead designer of Civ 4, is famous for saying, given the opportunity, players will optimize the fun out of a game. I believe it's antithetical to the spirit of 4X games to sacrifice any of the X's in order to optimize a path to victory. Doing so optimizes the fun out of the game, and Civ 7 now seems to me as one of the worst perpetrators of the concept. I plan to make a video about how Civ 7 has shed its coat as a 4X or grand strategy game and has now positioned itself as one of the most robust puzzle games in the video game market. But for now, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching, and hey, if you like this video, check out some of my other ones and smash the like and subscribe thingies and stay tuned for more. And as always, remember to keep playing and making your own civilization stories, your own amazing path through history, and I'll see you next time.